Edward Brown, host of The Best of Investing, here to remind you to tune in this week on Saturday at 8 p.m. Our guest is going to be Brett Berkey. You're not going to want to miss this show. That's The Best of Investing on Saturday at 8 p.m. Welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing. I'm your host, Edward Brown. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Use that number to answer the trivia questions for a 5-pack tanning certificate given away during this show. That certificate's not sponsored by the radio station, but by Tan Bella Tanning Salon with 2 locations in San Francisco and 1 in Marin. Now, today we do have a special guest, attorney Kevin Kim from Fortra Law. And the title of this episode is Fortra Law Unpacked, What the Private Lending Industry's Leading Firm is Doing Next. I'm going to read a quick little bio on Kevin. Kevin Kim leads the corporate and securities team at Fortra Law, focusing on fund formation, private placements, and securities offerings for private lenders and real estate investors. He's a nationally recognized expert in mortgage fund formation and teaches at the AAPL, we call it Apple, a certified fund manager course. Kevin also hosts Lender Lounge with Kevin Kim, where he interviews key figures in the private lending industry. Welcome, Kevin. Haven't seen you for a long time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a while.
Absolutely. Okay, so I was just reading about your bio, and you wear a lot of hats: attorney, podcaster, speaker.
Yeah.
What does a typical day look like for you?
Well, thankfully, I have a very rigid schedule, and every day is a little bit mixed. But we don't shoot the podcast very often, so maybe once a month, maybe once every twice a month at most. So I spend most of my day being an attorney, right? And so
Yeah.
mostly consulting with incoming clients, working with existing clients to solve their problems, and primarily these days, as I've kind of stopped doing dealing with the day-to-day drafting, I'm really more acting as a consultant and advisor to these clients of ours, and they're all storming the beaches and trying to take market share, and so here I am trying to help them achieve that.
And what drew you into the private lending and fund formation in the first place? What was the moment that solidified it for you?
Well, private lending was actually more of a lucky circumstance, right? So yeah, I joined the firm way back when, and it was as a contract attorney doing securities work. I had uh, previous work previously worked at different firms doing private placement work and basic securities offerings and that kind of stuff. But during law school, I worked at the SEC, so I was very familiar with the regulatory framework. But the lending part of things are a little bit different because, there's not a lot of firms that back then, at least, that was
Yeah.
focused in this industry. This is back in 2014. And, when I joined the firm, it was refreshing because I really enjoy real estate finance
Yeah.
because I used to be a loan officer before law school. So I
Ah,
worked at
okay.
a Korean bank called Wilshire State Bank. Today it's now called Bank of Hope. And, I was an underwriter slash loan officer. And so, real estate finance has always been something that I understood well and, uh, uh, excelled in during law school as well. And so
Yeah.
it was refreshing for me to be able to do both, right? To do what I've been
Yeah.
trained in law school, but also to be able to work in an arena where it's just really easy for me to understand.
It's in your
Um,
blood. It never leaves you.
yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, and it is in my blood technically. I mean, my father was a banker
Ah,
on the loan side, and he did it for 40 years. And his father in Korea was president of a bank. So
oh,
yeah.
okay. Wow. All right. We are going to cut to our first commercial break. Before we do, I do want to make a mention here for Pacific Private Money. They have a fund called the Arrival Fund. They're still paying 10% backed by deeds of trust, primarily first deeds of trust on homes. Check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. Let them know that you heard about them on the radio show, The Best of Investing. Here is our first trivia question. And as a reminder to Kevin, if you know the answer, don't say anything quite yet. We'll see if you can answer when we get back from our break. All right, here's our first trivia question. What is the highest grossing film of all time? The highest grossing film of all time. Call 888-912-1190. The first caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate, which is worth about $100. So it's a nice little gift we're giving away. Again, 888-912-1190 to answer this question. What is the highest grossing film of all time? All right, stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We are going to be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Kevin Kim, attorney of Fortra Law. Our first trivia question: what is the highest grossing film of all time? What do you think it is, Kevin?
You want me to answer? I think it's Avengers Endgame. I think Avengers Endgame was one of the biggest movies, wasn't it?
That was, but I think that's number 2, because Avatar in 2009 passed the 2.9 billion.
Avatar.
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah, that's true.
For a long time, it was Titanic, but that was 1997, and
Right.
2.9 billion. That's incredible. I mean, I liked the movie. It wasn't that great, but it was okay. It was interesting. Let's put it that way.
It was interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so what? We do have an investor focused type question. What inspired you to focus your legal practice on investment funds and private lending structures?
Well, I mean, part of it was the securities practice the firm had, right? So when I joined the firm, that was what it focused on. But what I found was I really enjoyed securities law. I think it's a very interesting field of law, and I'm not one of those people that obsesses over the compliance aspect of things. I'm actually really more interested on the transactional aspect of things, building things and creating things. And so personally, those aspects, building strategies and advising through them and getting through the necessary compliance and allowing companies to achieve their goals has been the fundamental reason why I practice law. And otherwise, I would have went into a different field. So this allows me to do all that, right? Because I'm working with lenders at a very early stage sometimes, and that's really inspiring, right? Because to watch entrepreneurs really storm that beach.
Well, one of the things I appreciate about having done some work with you in the past is the fact that unlike some attorneys who are deal killers, you're not like that. You're like a problem solver, and like you said, entrepreneurial type of okay, we've got this issue. Well, this is how. Let's see how we can solve it, rather than just no. That's
right.
Real appreciate that. What trends are you currently seeing in the private lending industry, and are there any major shifts investors should be aware of?
I mean, I think investors who are buying deeds of trust or investing in funds should be very excited by this fact. Private lending has become widely accepted by Wall Street, right? And it gives them, I think it gives them comfort, right? So the idea is that they're investing in a legitimate business, a legitimate industry, and they're investing in via a different strategy by, through a fund or through trust deeds. But the reality is that Wall Street has come in a big way and has validated the strategy, right? And so that's immensely advantageous, big picture, and the industry has grown.
Let me back up. So how? I mean, I can't imagine Wall Street coming in and buying individual deeds of trust.
They do.
Really?
Yeah. That's so Wall Street in a big way.
They got to be big. They got to be big numbers then.
For sure, right? So for at least since about 2014 starting, but really actively in 2016. Institutional investors have actively acquired loans in our industry for some time. And now, today, there's now rated securitizations happening in our sector. And that leads to a significant amount of institutional capital validating the strategy. But it doesn't eliminate the opportunities for investors, because there's always going to be a need for loans that don't quite fit the institutional box. And so many lenders have a need to have that balance sheet strategy and need to raise capital. The other big thing that's changed, and this is brand new news, right? This is as of like 30 minutes ago on July 3rd. The One Big Beautiful Bill has passed the House. Well, passed the Senate, back to the House, passed the House, and it's now going to President Trump's desk for signature, which he'll obviously do. And that's huge because it extends this 20% pass-through deduction that was so meaningful to LPs in our
Oh, the Cuban,
industry. The
yeah.
Cuban deduction, yeah. So that, and not only does it make it permanent, but it increases it. So it goes from 20 to 23%.
Oh,
And then your listeners will probably care a lot about this, but they're also increasing the SALT deduction. So for
yeah.
Californians, we pay a lot in income tax to the state of
Yeah.
California, and so to be able to deduct more income tax that we pay to the state on our federal, that's really meaningful as well. So I think overall, the tax reform that's going to come in the next year is also going to be a huge benefit to the private lending
Any time
industry.
that you take money out of the government's hand and back into the public's hand is always a good thing, because and
Exactly.
we're a consumer type, we're not like other countries that maybe are so living in fear that they save every little dollar and they don't spend anything. America's
Right.
not
Right.
like that, and so that's how our economy grows quite a bit. Very interesting.
Correct.
In fact, I'm trying to remember now. What did they make the SALT deduction? It was 10,000. What is it now?
Now it's 40,000.
40,000. Okay,
Yeah.
that'll help quite a bit.
Meaningful.
And the
Yeah.
cubic now, did they raise the? It used to be like 315,000 or something.
Yeah. So
It's a,
the maximum deductible, like the cap out
yeah.
or tax bracket remains the same. At least
Okay.
I haven't read everything yet, just passed. But
Yeah.
the tax brackets have been changed a little bit so that
Yeah.
if you're in the top tax bracket, you're phased out.
Yeah.
But does not apply to REIT dividends. So that's very useful for fund
Yeah.
investors to know.
I tell you what, before we go to our break, how do people get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more about what you do?
Mhm.
Give out your information.
Yeah, so you can go to our website, fortrelaw.com. You can also email me at k.kim@fortrelaw.com. And we're also on all the different social media channels for social Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and so you can find us on there as well.
All right. Here's our second trivia question. This is a tennis question. Which major tennis tournament is played on clay courts? Call 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate. I do want to make a mention here also for Action Whitewater Adventures. They provide the best rafting experience in the North Bay. From beginners to more advanced rafters, check them out at actionwhitewater.com for rafting trips. Stay with us. Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing. I'll be right back. Go. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. One more time, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Kevin Kim of Fortra Law. Second trivia question. Which major tennis tournament is played on clay courts? Kevin, what's the answer to that?
This is the French Open, right?
Yes, that is correct. All right, you're batting 50% right now, or 500. All right, now for people considering investing in a private debt, in a private debt or real estate fund, what due diligence
Mhm.
should they be doing on the legal side?
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff that you can do. The first thing is not really legal. I mean, on the legal side, I would say it's very simple, right? Make sure that they have their securities filings in. Make sure that they're using an actual securities exemption, like a Reg D. Make sure that they have actual offering documents, right? Do they have a PPM? Do they have an LPA? Do they have subdocs? Those kind of things, right? But it's really, those are kind of table stakes. There are some things that an investor should probably do beyond those aspects. It's probably more along the lines of due diligence on the business, right? And so our recommendation typically is, especially for the like the first time, when they're doing it for the first time, they want to get comfortable with it. Track record is immensely useful, right? So their lending track record, their existence, how long have they been around, as a going concern? Do they have a solid team in place? Is there solid character with the sponsor?
Hmm.
Additional beneficial documentation. For example, audited financials are a very useful tool for funds because it gives the investor a lot of confidence. So those are kind of some things that I would recommend.
Okay. And you're well known for your work with mortgage funds. What exactly is a mortgage fund and how does it differ from other real estate investment vehicles?
Well, the most important thing to remember is that a mortgage fund is a pool of mortgages, right? So they're usually loans in the private lending industry, short-term loans that are producing a little bit higher interest rate than your average home loan. But the investment is interest income, right? And so it produces interest income. So you are going to be earning interest income. So think of this as a fixed income type strategy that's akin to more of a a bond type investment where you're earning interest income, right? As opposed to a real estate strategy where you're primarily investing in growth, right? Your investment is designed to be based off of I'm investing in this pool of real estate strategies. The goal is to improve them or to rent them and sell them at a premium, right?
And
And
the fund,
so,
in that case, the fund owns the real estate, whereas in the mortgage
correct.
fund, they act like the bank.
Correct. And in a debt fund, a mortgage fund, they're a lender, right? They're
Yeah.
owning loans like a bank would. And so that the difference really is, if you think about it, like cash flow versus growth, right? Which one do
Yeah.
you like? And they're both valid, right? They're both valid investments. I have
Sure.
no objection to either one. I personally think you should have a couple different things in that regard. But overall, it's an income-based investment, right? So that's really the important thing.
Yeah, one of the things that I've always been kind of a little concerned about with the equity side ones are, how much debt do they have? Because leverage
Mhm.
can, if it's too leverage too high, that can really kill you.
Mhm.
Especially, if interest rates change or, you get a lot of vacancies and that sort of thing. You can
You
make
had
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
money, like
stress.
you said, with the growth.
You had a lot of stress in the real estate market because of the interest rate changes, and that was
Yeah.
that was because they couldn't either refi out of the loans or sell the properties, or they were variable, and
Yeah.
just the costs went
And
up.
and
So,
do you like both strategies of owning individual deeds of trust and owning funds?
well, personally, I don't, right? So if I'm putting my investor hat on real quick, right? Like I
Yeah.
tried it myself just to see what it's like, and maybe it's because of what I do for a living. I really did not enjoy being a trusted investor because I have a day job, right? I'm very busy. There's a lot of moving parts, and
Yeah.
having my name on the deed, it was actually it sounded cool because I have control, right? And I'm
Yeah.
I'm the one that
Exactly.
makes the decisions. But at the same time, I wasn't the only one on the loan. So there's two other lenders on the loans, fractional. That
Yeah.
was issue number one. Issue number two was, uh, I realized, wait a minute, if this thing goes sideways and we have to foreclose, well, I'm getting sued, right? So I didn't like that either.
Yeah.
And so, um, beyond that, the issue that I had was it paid off so quickly, right? So the loan was
Yeah.
a 12-month note and it paid off in 6 months, right? So I really didn't like that. And so, overall, I found myself to be in the camp of preferring a fund investment because I have a day job, right? I work maybe
Yeah.
50 hours a week, a month. I say maybe 60 hours. So I
Yeah.
don't have the luxury a week. I'm sorry. I don't have the luxury of doing all that. And so
Yeah.
funds are a lot more passive investment and it's an industry that I know. And so if I were someone who's actively investing, which I personally can't because I just bought a house, so there's that. But if I was actively investing, I would be pursuing uh, a fund structure because it's a
Okay.
lot easier on the
Well, it's interesting, when I've
time.
talked to people about doing individual deeds of trust, I've cautioned them about doing fractional ones if they don't
Yeah.
know everybody in there, because I've
Yeah.
experienced and seen horror stories when you have fractional ones with people you don't know, and either they don't
Right.
have the money to come up with if something goes wrong. If everything goes fine, nobody has a problem. It's when things go
Right.
bad,
Yeah.
people do.
It wasn't my
All
cup
right.
of tea.
Yeah, yeah, and I totally get it. And the nice thing about a fund is the fact that it's like you said, you don't get paid off early, so that money is sitting idle. It's just constantly working, right? And you have the
Exactly.
ability to reinvest if you want. Okay, let's go to our third trivia question here, which is, what is located at the top of the Eiffel Tower? Besides just like a spire or something, what is located at the top of the Eiffel Tower? Call 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate. Do want to make a mention here also for the Transcendence Theater. They have some awesome Broadway type shows in Sonoma in their outdoor theater. I always love going to them myself. Go to transcendencetheater.com to check out their various show dates. And don't touch that dial. The best of investing. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, along with Kevin Kim from Fortro Law. Our third trivia question: what is located at the top of the Eiffel Tower? Do you know, Kevin?
The French flag?
No, we're actually thinking of like below the actual ceiling. They call it
No, I wouldn't know. I don't know. Yeah. It's been so long.
a champagne bar. A
Really?
champagne bar. Yeah, I
Oh,
know. I thought that was that kind of amazed me myself there. Let's see here. What else we got here? For anyone who's listening who's interested in setting up a fund or expanding their private lending business, what's the best way to get started?
I mean, the first thing to think about is really this is an expansion to your business, right? So you have to understand, like, if you are strapped for time or resources, it may not be the best strategy right now. Like
Yeah.
I've actually tell clients more often than not that you may not be ready for this. So internally, so running a fund is not easy. So it requires time, energy, and resources. You can outsource almost all of the third party, but you still need to be able to dedicate the time and energy and the resources to do it. Right, it costs money. The second thing I would say is it's really your business, right? From a capital standpoint, is this the right move for you? Some clients it is the right move, some clients it isn't, right? And so
Yeah.
if you're relying primarily on trust deed strategies, I think it is a good time to think about it because that's really inefficient. But if you're relying on the secondary market and you're corresponding or selling and stuff like that, there it might or might not be. And I find that many people explore it when it comes to that second group of people, but then they realize it may not be the best fit, or timing it becomes a problem because it's going so well with the secondary market. And so, but I always caution a little bit of carefulness there because the secondary market is driven by Wall Street, and Wall Street is fickle, and so you need to have a backup plan in the long term. So when
It
you
seems
have
like
the
there.
time and energy to do it.
Okay. Also, from a fund manager standpoint, there always seems to be the challenge of money coming in versus putting deals out.
Oh
Making
yeah,
loans.
that's a fundamental precept is can you raise the money, right? So
Yeah.
I always ask, like, have you ever raised money before? Do you have investors that are ready to commit? It, and it doesn't mean that even if you've got a strong social media presence, right? It's not going to be good
Yeah.
enough. You have to have people that are willing to put money with you. So
When is there time for like a fund manager to think about, hey, it's time for me to close this fund? Because most
mm,
funds I would think are open-ended funds rather than closed-ended funds.
yes.
Okay.
It's
What-
hard to say. I mean, we've got clients that are in their 15th year of operation, right? So,
yeah.
but yes, there are reasons to close, right? So one, the portfolio is really underperforming. You have a lot of troubled loans, because of whatever economic conditions.
Yeah.
Two, maybe the structure you have in place and the business plan you have in place is a little antiquated, and you'd rather not do an amendment to change things. You'd rather just move on to fund number two. That's very common. Uh, Third, this is more, I guess, not really the fund, but really on the GP side. The fund manager inside the fund manager entity,
Yeah.
there is a breakup that happens, right? It happens a lot, right?
Oh, yeah.
Partnerships get formed,
Sure.
partnerships break up, right? And so that happens, and whether it be true partners or a key executive leaving, that can all oftentimes trigger the need to
Okay.
think about, okay, maybe we need to pare the business back a little bit and shift strategies, and so that has oftentimes led to a fund wind down.
And are you a fan of forming a REIT versus just the regular old LP
Yeah.
or LLC?
I mean, I don't advocate one strategy over the other. My philosophy is always let's try to find the right fit for you. But I do push the REIT a lot because the taxes, right? I mean, the downside of private lending is that if you're an investor, it's all ordinary income, right? And so
Yeah.
unless you're in a non-taxable plan, it kind of sucks from that perspective. So any kind of tax deduction is meaningful, but it's not a fit for everybody, right? So
Yeah.
if you sell a lot of your loans out of your fund, then it's definitely not a good fit. If you are a really small fund, if you're like sub $10 million, then it's probably not a
Yeah.
good fit.
But the
It,
tax
but
benefit, though, I guess the QBID doesn't have those limitations from on the REIT
no,
standpoint,
that's the
right?
beautiful thing about REITs, right? So the REIT provision in 199A,
Yeah.
those tax bracket cap outs, they don't apply. And now that it's 23% and starting next year, it's a really meaningful, really
I wonder.
meaningful function.
I wonder why. Does it apply to REITs, but not the limitations, but not to the LLC formation? The
Yeah, I
Reg
think
D.
it probably is. I mean, if we're thinking pragmatically about it, it's probably, part of the whole lobbying industry, right?
Oh,
But all I can tell you is it's most likely because it's a different kind of it's passive income, right? And so that's less concerning to tax it differently.
I mean, because it's still passive. I mean, if you're an investor, you're still a passive investor. But I guess from a
Well,
REIT
see, that's the
standpoint,
difference
interest
in a
income.
fund versus not a fund, a regular fund, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Regular
yeah,
fund
because
is
in a
considered.
REIT, I guess it comes in as interest income on your Schedule B. But if you're in an LLC, you get a K1.
Both structures, we structure them in a way where the investors still get a K1. But
Oh,
the
okay.
issue that you run into is a regular debt fund is considered to be an active trader business because it's in the business of funding loans, right?
Yeah.
And that's considered to be an active trader business, as opposed to a REIT, which is considered to be a passive business, right? So it doesn't, and the REIT's also taxed as a C corporation, so it eliminates that argument, and that gives you the tax benefits, I think. So
Funny
here we
because
are.
I mean, yeah, it's so funny because I'm thinking of like what lobbying industry. It's still real estate. It's still real estate lending. I'm not sure where
Right.
the lobbying part
Not
of being a
us. It's
REIT.
definitely not us.
Yeah, and I mean, not all REITs are traded. Some REITs stay private. They don't trade on the stock exchange. So that's kind of interesting. All right, Kevin, give out your information one more time, and then we're going to go to we got a couple more questions to ask you, and then we'll go to our thoughts for the day. So give out your information if you would.
Yeah, so you can find me at fortralaw.com. You can also email me at k.kim, K-I-M, as in Mary, at fortralaw.com. You can also give me a call, 949-535-1439 is my number, direct, and it goes to my cell phone. So.
Very good. All right, audience, stay with us. The Best of Investing will be right back with some closing comments and our thoughts for the day. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown. Last time for today. And then we are going to have our thoughts for the day. And Kevin Kim from Fortra Law. No trivia question, but Kevin, can you tell our audience about your podcast, Lender Lounge?
Yeah, so we created it during COVID. The reason why it exists was an accident. We interviewed Dr. Steve Pollock, the founder of Anchor Loans, at our conference once we discovered that he was about to retire. And so we wanted to get one on the books with him because he's such an influential figure in the sector, and he's also very well respected. And also, he's from Berkeley, and I went to Berkeley, so that was pretty cool. We had the interview, and then COVID happened, and we were like, well, let's just do more of these, right? So
Yeah.
we started interviewing some of my direct clients and kind of get this thing going, and it started picking off. And here we are now in season 5. We just launched our most recent episode, which was the unofficial roast of myself by Nima and Jen in our office.
Oh,
And it's been fun. I mean, we get to talk to lenders of all shapes and sizes across the country. And the goal really is to get an understanding of how their businesses are run, and how their businesses stood up and get their thoughts on where we're headed. And there's some of the best and brightest in the industry have joined us. And, I really enjoy it. It's been great for the firm as well. And what's been cool about it is we've been able to really get stories that are about people and employees and culture building more than anything else. And I really, really enjoy that.
So what are some common traits you see among the most successful lenders and fund managers?
I would say their obsession with a really solid team, right? So one of the most memorable interviews that we've had, a couple of them actually, were with Bill Tesser with CB3 and also with Kevin Werner at Renovo, and they have one big thing in common: like they're obsessed with taking care of their people and building an amazing company, and their employees really, really enjoy and embody the company's culture and values, and that's really something that's hard to find. And
Yeah,
you'd be
I've had my
surprised how hard it
associate
is to build something
for
like that.
gosh, I've had this one associate. She's been with me for 30 years. Yeah. So you treat
Right.
people well, and that helps quite a bit. All right, let's see here. Again, want to make a mention here for Pacific Private Money. They do have their Arrival Fund where they make short-term bridge loans, sell them off, put them on the conveyor belt, sell them off to the big boys, get the money back, put it back on the conveyor belt. It's kind of funny because people say, well, what's the default rate? You say, well, so far it's 0 because they sell the loans off before the borrowers made the first payment. So they don't even know if it goes into default. All right. And let's see here. We have our thoughts of the day. You ready for this, Kevin? All right. So I have been diagnosed with a chronic fear of giants. It's called fee-fi phobia. I thought you'd like that one. And a guy tried to sell me a coffin. Yeah, that's the last thing I need. All right, audience, tune in next week to the Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away more free prizes for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.